All right, good morning. Welcome, everybody, and welcome to the 14th edition of Senior Tech Club Live. If this is the first time that you're here, this is a series of online YouTube live video programs that we've been doing on iPhone topics. And we started this process a few weeks ago. We've been doing it every Monday and Thursday. And unbelievably, this is the 14th episode in this whole series. So welcome. Let's talk about our focus today. I'm so delighted in that this happens to be one of my favorite topics, and that is just focusing on the iPhone camera and the powerhouse that you actually hold in your hand, right? It's a great camera. And we are going to be focusing on the camera app for this session and the next two sessions. And hopefully through that entire discussion, we are going to be able to not only hit the basic operations, that's our plan today, but in part two, we are going to focus on items related to beyond the point and click, talking about things like live photos and HDR and some of the items that many people, have questions about. And then in our third session, we're going to talk about more of the advanced functions that have come to the iPhone camera recently. Things like night mode and the ability to do portrait photographs. But today, our focus is talking about basic camera functions on the iPhone. If you are new to this, one of the things I'm going to propose to you is there's some surprises. I hope that there are some surprises in our discussion today. As an example, I'm going to talk about 8 different ways to release the shutter. All right, on the iPhone. And most people think, well, what do you mean? Is there anything beyond just that red circle that's in the iPhone app? And the answer is yes, there is quite a bit more than that. So as you can see in our list of topics under basic camera functions, we are going to focus on launching the camera app and the multiple ways that you can quickly capture a Kodak moment. We're going to talk about releasing the shutter. We're going to talk about selfies and switching the camera. We're going to talk about the timer, right, in order to release the shutter. We're going to talk about burst photos. That's another shutter function. And then we're also going to talk about the zoom capabilities that's available in our iPhones, and then talk about flash and then exposure and focus. So there's actually quite a bit of information in this session. So, and once again, if you go back to the session webpage, if you are interested in downloading and seeing the slide deck that you see on the left-hand side of your screen, you have the ability to do that. Our housekeeping rules, all right, as we have done 13 times before, these sessions are all very casual. Whether or not you are watching us live or you are able to come back to this video at some point in the future, I just want you to pretend that we're all sitting around the kitchen table. However, one of the problems of this particular platform is I cannot see you, nor can I hear you. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't want to hear from you. So if you have a question, you can send me a chat on the YouTube window if you're watching this at YouTube Live, or you can also send me a text message at the number that you see on the screen. And this is a number that I will monitor, all right, during the session. Or if there is a follow-up question or a comment, please send me an email. I welcome your emails, and I will look to get back to you and respond to your questions. Okay, the iPhone camera. I'm going to propose to you that the iPhone puts a pretty darn good camera in your pocket. And to validate this, I wanted to start our discussion today by looking at some examples of how professionals are actually using the iPhone for photographs, for producing videos, and also in broadcast scenarios. And I'm talking about all of these because it kind of validates the quality of the device that you actually have in your pocket. All right, here's example number one. I love to cite this, and there are many, many more. A couple years ago, Time Magazine did a series on women, all right, and outstanding women in the world, and some of the roles and some of the places. The series was called First, and if you take a look at the screenshot on the left-hand side, every single one of these photographs was taken with an iPhone. Professional photographer taken with an iPhone. Quality to the level that it would land on the cover of Time magazine. Must be a pretty good camera. Here's a second example that I'm going to cite. There have been a couple of pretty prominent music videos that have been recorded entirely on the iPhone. One example that I can cite here is back in February when Lady Gaga, if you look at the photo, that's Lady Gaga in sort of the Lady Gaga style right in the middle of this photograph. Lady Gaga filmed or videoed this music video entirely using the iPhone. There's another example of Selena Gomez last fall doing a music video entirely filmed on an iPhone. My suggestion, this is a pretty good camera that goes into your pocket. And then recently, since our stay-at-home scenario, it's been interesting the number of times that the iPhone has shown up in broadcast scenarios, right? This happens to be Al Roker. Al Roker is, of course, the weather person for the Today Show. And he just gave us a picture of his iPhone setup where he actually has two iPhones in front of him, one of which is videoing the broadcast, right, his weather broadcast. He also has an iPad, you can see that down in the lower part, that he uses for his teleprompter. Now, there's another prominent example that we've seen over the last month or so, and that is Apple was working with the American Idol show. So here you had the contestants all performing their music from home, and this particular show was using Apple equipment, specifically Apple iPhones, in order to broadcast or capture their music devices. Summary of this whole process, this is a pretty darn good camera in your pocket. And so the idea behind this whole series that we're doing is I want to help you use it to the max, to be able to take advantage of not only its quality and just a basic photo, but also the advanced functions that allow you to be more creative. Right, so this all starts with the camera app. And so for the purpose of this discussion today, we are going to be doing all of our work on the conventional camera app that comes with the iPhone. Now, I want to talk about this in that I'm willing that I can go out across this live audience or a future audience, and I can ask for a show of hands. How many of you have taken a photo with the iPhone camera? And I'm willing to bet that almost everybody has done that. Right? And here's the typical action. You launch the camera app by tapping the camera icon from the home screen. Right? That launches the camera app. You line up your picture, you gather the people, whatever the photograph happens to be, and then step number 2, you tap the shutter. Right? That's the basic action. But part of my basis for this 3-part series on the camera app is to show you that there is so much more to the camera app that allows you to not only change the quality and also be creative and innovative with your photos. Okay, the first thing that we're going to do is I want to talk about the different ways that you can launch the camera app. Now, as I said before, let me switch screens here and come into the middle. As I said before, most people will simply tap on the camera icon on the screen. They'll tap on it, launch the camera. Here you are. All right. In this environment. All right, now you're looking at my computer system. The point here is that most people will simply go to the camera icon on the main screen. That's awesome. All right. However, I want you to know that there are some options. All right. So as an example, and this is what I list under point number 1. If you do a long press, now long press is defined as a press and hold. If you do a long press, and you can try this, right, as we're talking here. If you do a long press, notice that you are now given some camera app options, right? The option being take a selfie, record a video, take a portrait selfie. All right, so as an example, if you were coming in here because you wanted to take a selfie, you knew that you wanted to take a selfie, you might consider doing that long press and then tapping on take selfie, and what you get was, and you notice right on my screen, it immediately goes to the selfie. You don't have to do the camera switching that sometimes isn't always automatic because you have to kind of search around for that function, right? So long pressing on the camera app icon will give you those options. Option number 2 for launching the camera app. I want to go back to the lock screen. All right, and here is my lock screen. I am getting notifications coming in. This is all fine. We are right on the lock screen, and depending upon your phone, there may be a couple of options that you can use to actually launch the camera right from the lock screen. So this might be key if you are walking down the street, like what happened to us a year ago, and all of a sudden we saw a couple deer crossing the road in front of us. Wanted to be able to quickly grab the phone, get quickly to that camera app to be able to capture that Kodak moment. All right. And so now here is the lock screen. And I want you to note that newer iPhones have a camera icon on the lower part of the lock screen. Sorry, mine disappeared here. But if you do a long press on that camera icon, it will then launch the camera without having to unlock the phone. All right, I'm going to go back to that one more time. If you do a long press, on that process, you have to press just a little bit longer on it. That will then launch the camera. There's another way to do it, so that if you don't have that camera app on your lock screen, you can also just do a swipe left. Notice this. Right, and so all I'm doing is I'm swiping to the left. I'm going to show it like this. Right, so here's my lock screen. I swipe to the left, and that exposes the camera. All right, and so in point number 2, I want you to be aware of the fact that you can actually access the camera app directly from the lock screen. All right, now let me go into here. All right, so now I'm back on my home screen. And just for our discussion purposes, I want you to imagine that you are in your email app. And I'm going to go into my email app, and I'm just going to scroll. I'm deep, deep, deep down into my email list. All right, and now you encounter that Kodak moment. You can launch the camera app from the control center. Right now, If you have been part of our audience, you know that I'm a big fan of the control center. And how you do the control center depends upon your phone and whether or not you have a home button. So if you have a home button on your phone, what you would do is put your finger right next to the home button and just swipe up. Not on the home button, but just right next to it and swipe up. On my newer iPhone, without a home button, here I can put my finger on the battery and I can access my control center by just pulling down. So put your finger on the battery and just pull down. And now, sure enough, there is a camera app amongst my list of standard apps that are included in the control center. So I can just tap on it and it will launch the camera app. Now go back to my control center on the battery, pull down, and I want you to also notice that if you do a press and hold on this, you get those same options that you had back on the home screen. Take selfie, record video, and so forth. So point number 3 on this screen, the third method for launching the camera app is to do this from the control center. And you remember, you can access the control center if you have a home button on your phone. Put your finger right next to the home button and swipe up. If you don't have a home button on your phone, put your finger right on the battery and just pull down the control center. Then tap the camera icon. Fourth method for launching the camera app, consider using Siri. In fact, I am going to challenge you that if you encounter, if you have a close encounter with a popular personality, right? You run into, you're in the grocery store and you run into Bradley Cooper, right, in the grocery store. You are looking for the fastest way to get to a selfie, right? Because you want to grab that selfie. I'm going to propose to you that you might ask Siri. Let me demonstrate. So I am going to, I'm just going to press the side button in order to summon Siri. Take selfie. Yeah, he misunderstood me. Take selfie. All right, and there it went to it right there. Now, the first time I did that, she thought I said text Sophie. I probably just sent a message to Sophie. Sorry if you're seeing this. All right, but you can also say take a photo. All right, and it launches right into the camera. You could say take a video. There are a number of options that you could explore using Siri. Item number 5 on this list, in that if you are using other apps, you will often find ways to launch the camera app from other applications. For example, if you are sending a text message in the message app, you can actually tap the camera icon inside the message app. Similarly, if you are in an app like one of the social media apps, right, Facebook, Twitter, you can take a picture right inside that app. There's even a place on the notes. If you go into the Notes app and you do a new note, down at the bottom of the screen, there is actually a camera app down here. You can tap on it in order to take a photo to put into a notes document. Right. So the point here is that when you look at the camera app, the vast majority of people only use the camera app icon on the main screen, and that's awesome. All right, if it's convenient for you. But if you are doing something where that is not convenient, you have a number of other options. Being able to access from the lock screen, being able to access from the control center, using Siri is a possibility. Some of these other possibilities are particularly useful when you're doing something else with your phone already. And then finally, don't forget to look for that camera icon when you are using other apps, right? So this is part of the discussion that says the 5 ways to launch the camera app. There are more ways than just tapping on that icon on the home screen. All right, next, we're going to talk about releasing the shutter. And as I indicated before, the vast the vast majority of people, when taking a photograph on the iPhone camera, will simply launch the camera app, and you're going to be looking at my screen here, and they will just press the shutter button down at the bottom of the screen. That's great. And if that's all convenient for you, let's continue to do that. Right. But one of the things I want people to know is that there are a number of other ways that you can release the shutter. Right. Number 2, using the volume buttons. Right now, I'm going to switch my phone, and this is going to mess up my screen, that I'm going to have to adjust it back. But imagine you are taking a photograph. Right. By the way, you're looking at my lighting here. You're also looking at my computer screen. And so now, if you want to switch your phone like into a landscape mode, right? And you're not getting that. I'm not supporting that on my display, but you can kind of see how I am holding the phone. And so that if you are taking a picture like this, you can actually release the shutter with either of the volume buttons. I pressed the volume button and it just took a picture, all right? And I can do it multiple times, and it just took that picture. And so if you think of it, this allows you to take that picture holding the camera up in front of you, and it might be more steady, and it might lend a better picture. I'm going to propose in a little bit here that if you are taking a selfie, I'm going to switch my camera around, and you are taking a selfie, that taking a selfie using the front-facing camera might be easier if you use one of the volume buttons. Now, you're probably going to do it like this, all right? I'm just taking pictures, just taking selfies, if you will. But the point here is that you can use the 2 volume buttons to also release the shutter. Option number 3. Do you remember? In fact, let me go back to here. Do you remember the earbuds, right, that you have? These are the earbuds that you normally will use to listen to videos or podcasts and so forth. Well, it turns out that you can also use the volume indicators on the earbuds, and also in order to release the shutter. And so here you have this little microphone block on the earbuds, and you've got a plus and a minus sign. You can use that to depress the shutter. It could be handy if you were doing some kind of still life or doing some kind of action where your phone was particularly sensitive to movement. Let's say you had your phone in a tripod. Now, I'll talk more about that next week, by the way, using tripods and accessories. But in this particular case, you can use the earbud. Another way that you can release the shutter is by using your Apple Watch. Now, I understand that not everybody has an Apple Watch, but your Apple Watch actually has a camera app icon on it. And so in that particular case, you get a couple of things. Number one, you can actually see what is showing in the camera's viewfinder, and then you can tap it in order to release the shutter. So if you happen to have an Apple Watch, just be aware that that capability can be pretty handy. And I just summoned Siri, and she was wondering what was going on. And then finally, there are some other approaches for doing for releasing the shutter. I'll give you just a couple of examples with accessories. Number one, this happens to be a selfie stick, and most selfie sticks, the way these work is you put your iPhone at the end so that you can hold it out in this fashion. They will oftentimes offer a shutter release. And then if you are so interested in doing some remote shutter, so let's say you're taking a family picture and you have your phone sitting in a tripod and you would like to use a remote shutter button. These are buttons that are specifically designed for releasing the shutter. They connect to your phone via Bluetooth, and you can use them to take photographs. I will give you access to my recommendations around iPhone accessories, iPhone camera accessories, and I'll focus on that next week. All right, so those are options 1 through 5 in terms of taking a picture, actually releasing the shutter on your iPhone. Using the, excuse me, let me switch to my, actually using the red circle, all right, or using the volume buttons, or using the volume buttons on your earbuds, all right, here, all right, or using an Apple Watch, or using accessories. Sorry, I'm probably swirling that around and making everybody dizzy with this action. All right, there are two, or actually 3 additional strategies for releasing the shutter that I want to talk about. All right, I want to talk about burst photos. Now, burst photos is a strategy where when you take a burst photo, here's the application first. You're taking a family picture, and you have everybody all lined up, ready for this picture. And you have some kind of, maybe you do a timer strategy, or maybe you do a remote shutter release like I have here. And you take one picture, and unfortunately, one person has their eyes closed. It happens, right? A burst strategy allows you to overcome that, because what will happen in a burst photo, the iPhone camera will actually take 10 photos per second. So bang, 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 bang. It'll actually take all of those photos, so that if somebody is blinking their eye, hopefully in the course of a second, or however long you might be holding the burst photo, that you will actually be able to get an image that works well for you. All right, so now how do you do a burst photo? Classic iPhones, and this is everything below an iPhone 11. So iPhone 7, 8, 10, right? You will actually press and hold the shutter button. On the other hand, if you have an iPhone 11, you're going to do a swipe, or kind of, I could think of it more as a shift of the shutter to the left. All right, so here's an example. Let's demonstrate an iPhone photo. All right, so now I'm going to do it as a selfie. All right, and so now you're sitting here looking at me. And if you have that classic iPhone, and you can do this as we talk about it, you would actually press and hold the shutter release. Now, on an iPhone 11, that function has been reserved for something else. But in my case, I'm going to shift my shutter to the left, and I have just taken over 50 images, right? And the intention is that hopefully one of those images is going to work for you. This is great for fast action. If you are trying to take a picture of, let's say, a picture of one of your children or grandchildren doing some kind of sports action, or other functions. Now, in this particular case, you now have the ability, I'm going to have to go back out here again, you now have the ability to use the Photos app in order to select individual photos from the 50. Now, I'm not going to demonstrate that here today, but rather I am going to refer you to nugget number 58 on the Senior Tech website. And you see that link down at the bottom here, links.seniortechclub.com/N58. N stands for nugget, N58 will then take you to the lesson that specifically talks about managing your burst photos. All right, it's a good strategy. This is method number 6 for releasing the shutter. So rather than just pressing it once, in most phones you're going to press and hold the shutter in order to get a burst of 10 photos per second. Next item. Method number 7 to release the shutter is to use a timer. Right now, there's a couple of different timer strategies, depending upon whether or not you have a classic iPhone again, or if you have an iPhone 11. All right, I'm going to go forward one screen, two screens, and I'm going to go, I'm sorry, this is the one I wanted to talk about. And what happens on the iPhone 11, I'm going to go back, by the way, to catch up on those topics, but I wanted to illustrate that if you happen to have an iPhone 11, you don't have a lot of those functions on the screen. But what you have to do is you have to tap on the arrow at the top, and now you have that clock down here. You also have your flash and live photo and some others that we're going to be talking about in our part 2 of this session. All right, you tap that same arrow in order to go back to your standard mode presentation. All right, now make you dizzy here, but we're going to go back to here. All right, so how do you set a timer? Well, you have two options. You can set a timer for 3 seconds or 10 seconds. And what will happen is you tap the shutter, and then either 3 seconds or 10 seconds later, the photo will actually be taken. All right, so here's how we do it. On my iPhone 11, I tap the arrow key, and then I tap the timer. Right? And after tapping the timer, it gives me an option. Do I want a 3-second timer or a 10-second timer? I'm going to choose 3 seconds for what we're doing here today. And now you get an indicator on the screen. You can see it's colored, and the timer is set for 3 seconds. I also have that indicator displayed on the top of the screen here. On the classic iPhones, you're not going to get those same indicators. But here's how this works. At this particular point, if I press the shutter, I am going to get a 3-second countdown, and it'll then take the picture. So now this is going to be perfect if you are taking that family picture, you've gathered everybody, you've got the camera lined up in a tripod, or somehow you've supported the camera, you set the timer. For a family picture, I'd recommend 10 seconds, and then you tap the shutter, and then you can walk around and be in the photograph. I'm going to press the shutter here. 3, 2, 1. Take the picture. Okay, and you get the same thing with the 10-second timer, except it will allow you to have that expanded time. All right, so doing a timer is really easy. All you're doing is you're saying, I'm going to choose either 3 seconds or 10 seconds, and then all you're going to do is you're going to tap the shutter just like you normally do, and then walk around to be in the photograph, and it will then take a timed release of that of your shutter. A note that I put down at the very bottom of this page, and that just so you're aware of this, that when you do a timed photo, either 10 seconds or 3 seconds, it will actually take a burst of 10 photos. Right, so it's perfect if you're doing that family picture and you want to eliminate the photo where somebody's eyes are closed during the process. You might be able to go through and change that. Remember, to be able to make that selection from a burst photo, go back to nugget number 58 at the Senior Tech Club website. All right, here's the final shutter release. This is an option that is only available on iPhone 11 and later phones, and that is a quick take video. So if you are looking at, and let me switch the camera around, right, like this, and a quick take video is going to be on the iPhone 11 is you press and hold the shutter. And if you can see from the timer on the screen, we are actually taking video at this point. And we are now 12 seconds into that video, and I release the shutter and the video stops. And so this is a quick take video. Now you have one other strategy in that if you do that quick take video and then shift to the right, you are now given a regular shutter button. So you now have a hands-free video, but you can actually tap on that shutter in order to take a photo during the midst of the video. All right, and then finally you just tap on the shutter button again in order to release that. All right, and so that is that quick video is only available on the iPhone 11. And once again, Apple fairly significantly enhanced the functions of the iPhone with version number 11, and so you have some new capabilities within that phone, right? So those were the 8 ways to release the shutter. Much more than just tapping the white shutter button. I want to talk about selfies for a second. Now, we've talked about a couple of these items already, but if you are in a situation where you need to take a selfie, so let's imagine that Bradley Cooper scenario. You encounter Bradley Cooper in the grocery store and you want to take a selfie. So you go to the camera app, and then what you might do is you might switch the camera, selfie, front-facing, back-facing camera, front-facing camera facing you, and then consider using the volume button in order to take that photo. So rather than contorting yourself, trying to figure out how you press the white button, consider using that volume button. In fact, you can even do it like this, all right, in the same fashion. So it makes it quite a bit easier for you to be able to take that selfie. Next item, I want to talk about Zoom. All right, so now you are in the camera app, and we're going to switch this around, and you are looking at my computer screen. I'm sorry, that's all I have. I apologize for not having this nice scenic landscape behind. I want to talk about the difference between optical versus video zoom. Many of the later iPhones have an optical zoom, and you can tell if you have optical zoom because on the back of your phone you would show 2 different lenses or 2 different camera lenses. If you have multiple lenses, that means your phone has an optical zoom. Everybody else that wants to zoom in closer to a picture would end up using a digital zoom. And a digital zoom, let me switch cameras here. Right, a digital zoom is where you will do the pinch action. You would do this pinch action in order to zoom in. Now that happens to be a digital zoom, right? Optical zoom is much better. It gives you a much better photo quality. And in fact, one of the statements that I have fun with when I talk about zooming, all right, getting up close to a photo, that if it is an option, it is much better to zoom with your feet than to zoom digitally, all right? Now, here's the challenge. When you do a digital zoom, you still have the same number of pixels, right? You still have the same resolution, but by zooming in, by doing that pinch, what you're doing is you are actually spreading out the resolution. And so if you send a digitally zoomed photograph to a photo printer like a Walgreens or a CVS or Target to get photographs printed, you will find that it'll be less resolution. The photos will be grainier because what you're doing is you are spreading out the individual pixels on that phone. So optical zoom is much better. So how do you know if you have optical zoom? Well, you can tell based on the lenses if you have more than one lens, or in a case like this, let me switch here. If you notice on my screen example, I actually have 0.5 and 1. So you will see the selection down at the bottom. Now, the actual items that you have will vary depending upon the phone that you have, right? In some cases, you'll see 2 times, 1 time. My phone happens to have a wide angle lens, which is a 0.5. And so that by tapping that indicator is the method that you will use in order to do the optical zoom on your particular phone. I've already talked about this one, flash. All right, so if you need flash on a photograph, I do want to talk that the rules have changed quite a bit. So if you grew up with Kodak Instamatic cameras like I did, you know, the conventional rule about flash is that if you were taking a photograph indoors, you would use flash. Outdoors in the daylight, you didn't have to use flash. Now, the rules have changed now. So you will find that your camera app does a very good job in indoor daylight without using the flash. So it's not an automatic function or an automatic decision that if you are indoors. But your iPhone does have a flash, and if you are in the camera app, you may have a flash indicator up on the upper part of the screen. Now, I am going to enable my other flash, and I'm going to use flash down at the bottom because generally you have three options on flash. Look down on the lower part of my screen or on the screenshot on the side, in that your three options are auto, on, and off. Now, in my particular case, and I think a lot of the professionals recommend this too, is that you keep the flash off. All right. That auto will automatically put the flash on in a low light situation, which may be right, but if you want to have control over it, then what you would do is keep it on off. On the other hand, if you definitely want a picture with a flash, right, and in this particular case, I took it on, and so now if I take a photograph, there's my flash, all right, and that was on even though I'm not in a low light situation here. So you can use your flash. Now, just from a professional photography standpoint, what the professionals tell us is that this is not a particularly good flash. That's why when professional photographers use the iPhone, they will still do separate lighting, all right? And in order to give a little softer light to have a little more control over it, you'll find that the flash on the iPhone camera happens to be a little bit on the harsh side. But that is how you manage your flash control. And then there's one additional topic that I wanted to talk about, and that is a function that's a little bit hidden, in that you can actually alter the focus and exposure of the camera against the background or the people or the objects that you are photographing. All right, so in a case like this, if I go into my camera app, and let me switch here, I go into my camera app and I have something in the background. So like I have these books in the background, and I would like to actually make that the focal point. I could tap on the books and that will change that focal point. Now, in that same process, after having tapped on that, I now get the sun. So I can actually change the exposure. All right, see, I'm adding much more light now, or I can make it darker to help add clarity to that item that is in the background. So if you're trying this along with me, the way you do this is you point your camera at the objects or the people, and you can now tap in order to change the focal point of that photo. The focal point then is what is the object or the person's face that is going to be in focus, right, while you're taking that picture. After having done that, you can then change the lighting appropriate to your situation. Now, there's one other item that's available here, and that is if you press and hold on that focal point, I now have an automatic exposure, automatic function lock. So it is now locked on that object And so even if I move my phone, the focal point is still at that same location, right? So it is a way of locking that. Now, in order to remove the lock, you just press and hold once again, and now you get the regular square with the sun sitting next to it, right? So in this particular case, we were able to use by just tapping on the screen, you get a square on your camera app, very similar to what you see on my PowerPoint on the left-hand side. That sun shows up, and now you can swipe up or swipe down on the sun in order to change the exposure, which in effect is going to change the amount of light that your camera is receiving. Okay. Those are the basic operations that I wanted to cover today. I went a little bit over time, but in a review, here's what we did. We gave you 5 different ways for launching the camera app. We presented 8 different ways for releasing the shutter. All right, we talked about the selfie process. We talked about the timer shutter release. We talked about burst photos, 10 images per second. We talked about zoom with the basic takeaway that if given an option, it's better to zoom with your feet, meaning get closer to your objects in order to get a bigger image. We talked about the flash. Remember, the conventional rules don't necessarily apply anymore. And then we talked about how to tap on an object on the screen in order to lock the focus and exposure into that item. Follow-up questions, again, you can always send questions to the Senior Tech Club questions at Senior Tech Club. If you want more information about the various lessons and recipes that were the basis for this discussion today, go back to the Live 14 site. That's the site you probably came from. Finally, next up, we're going to continue our series of live sessions that focus on the camera app. Next Monday, June 1st, we're going into the camera app part 2, where we are going to focus on, defining what is HDR and defining what is a live photo, and talking about more of the advanced functions in our camera. And then in part 3 on Thursday of next week, we're going to get into additional advanced items. We're going to go into portrait mode, some of the new modes that are available on your phone. So if you want information about future sessions, you can always go to links.seniortechclub.com/live, and all of the upcoming sessions are identified there. Additionally, if you want to go back and review any of the previous sessions, you can actually find our video archive. Okay, so once again, thank you very much for coming in and sitting with us. Whether or not you're looking at this video with us live or you're coming back at some point in the future, that's great. I do ask you to stay well, stay at home, keep washing your hands, and keep on learning. And we hope to see you back here next Monday. Bye now. Have a great week.